Now, what do Viola Davis, Tyra Banks, and Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley have in common? Besides being gorgeous, smart, and super talented women, they've all shared their struggle with alopecia. Alopecia areata is a disorder that can cause hair loss and affect 6.8 million people in the US today. And today we're learning more about it and how people cope with it. This is Alopecia 411.
Joining us now to educate us on alopecia is board-certified physician and consultant for the National Alopecia Areata Foundation, Dr. Angela Rogers.
Hi, good morning.
Now, can you start us with the basics? What is alopecia areata?
So alopecia areata is a very common autoimmune hair loss condition. Basically, your immune system gets confused and actually attacks your hair follicles, which leads to your hair falling out and sometimes the inability to be able to grow hair.
Now, Dr. Rogers, are there different kinds of alopecia?
Yes. So there's basically a spectrum of severity of alopecia. So there's alopecia areata, which is the more patchy, mild form. So there'll be coin-shaped bald spots in the scalp. There's like a medium form, alopecia totalis, and that's the loss of your scalp hair. And then there's a more severe form, so alopecia universalis, which, as it sounds like, universalis, you've lost your hair all over the body, scalp, facial hair, and body hair.
Wow.
Wow. When does alopecia usually develop?
Alopecia can develop at any time in one's life. A lot of people report that their hair loss started in childhood. Roughly 60% of individuals can start to have hair loss before the age of 20, but I've encountered dozens and dozens of people who've had hair loss later in life after a stressful event or some sort of major life event.
Wow. And Dr. Rogers, you've personally experienced living with alopecia. Can you tell us your story?
Yes. So I do have alopecia universalis. I was actually diagnosed when I was 4 years old. My mom was the one who found a coin-shaped bald spot in my own head. I went to see a dermatologist who's a skin and hair specialist who diagnosed me. And I was actually a part of a small clinical trial that led to the regrowth of my hair as a child. And it actually wasn't until college, while I was pre-med, that actually all of my hair fell out and I advanced from that mild form to the more severe form. And it was a terrible time in my life. I was going to classes, trying to be strong, after I left the house. But when I came home, I was torn up. I was a young woman losing my hair. And it wasn't until actually right before medical school that my mom discovered the National Alopecia Areata Foundation, or NAF. And that was going to one of their conferences was the first time I met someone who looked like me. And from there, I started running a support group in Sacramento County in California,
So great.
started doing some advocacy work, and yeah, that's it.
Wow.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Now we have a video question from one of our real fams regarding alopecia. Let's check it out.
Hi, my name is Katrina, and I'm from Houston, Texas. I started to lose my hair in my early 20s, late 30s. And it was tough at first, and I didn't know anybody with alopecia. I'd like to know, will hair ever grow back in those spots? And also, what words of advice would you give someone struggling to accept their own alopecia?
Great question.
Good questions.
Yeah, that is a good question. So first, I'll answer the first part. So in terms of will hair grow back? So that is really on a case-by-case basis. And so I would definitely recommend you contact your local dermatologist to get seen. And I think it's really important for everyone to know with alopecia that you are not alone. There's this feeling that you're kind of walking through life and kind of going through this on your own. And it's not true. As it was mentioned, there are millions of people out there who have alopecia. And so just keep that in mind, that you're definitely not alone. I think the next thing I would say is that finding some sort of support system is so important with this condition, which is really a chronic disease. And so getting a part of some sort of support group, connecting with a therapist, a psychiatrist, any kind of way that you can share your lived experience with someone else and really have someone see you and understand what you're going through is important. And then lastly, I'll say that things do get better. I'm, I think, an example of that. From, you know, this young, scared girl who didn't know what was going on in college, losing her hair, to now being this, you know, board certified family medicine physician and seeing patients of my own. You know, definitely things get better. And I think what's really great is that we do have more role models, it seems like nowadays than, you know, 30 years ago. So I think Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, as you know, was mentioned before, is living boldly and beautifully in her baldness. And I think she's an excellent role model of how we all can do the same.
But Dr. Roger, I want to ask you real quick, is there a difference between, is that alopecia, especially for African-American women around the edges, when they lose their edges, is that a form of alopecia or is that some type of different type of hair loss?
The kind of the form of alopecia that you're referring to is usually referred to as traction alopecia. So basically, some of the hairstyles that we use in our community leads to stress on the hair follicles and some pulling, and that alone can lead to hair loss.
Dr. Rogers, thank you so much. This was super helpful, this conversation. Thank you for teaching us more about alopecia areata and sharing your personal experience.